Nomadic Network, aka TNN. We're so excited to see all of you tonight. I'm calling in from San Diego, and I'm sure we've got you all from all over the world. So excited to see everyone. Before we get started, if you guys could in the chat box, let us know where you're calling in from and let us know what number event this is, whether it's your first, and if so, welcome. So happy to have you joining us at one of these events. Or if it's your 20th or 50th, write that down. It's so fun to see how many people we have, whether they're first timers or have been here for many months now. And then if you could also let us know if you have ever done a hut-to-hut hike before, and if not, if you're planning to in the future, that'd be great. My name is Laura, and I am one of the San Diego chapter leaders. And I think this is probably my 75th event or so. I've been to quite a lot. Love them all. They're all so different and unique. And I'm especially excited about this one because I have never done hut-to-hut hiking before. So really excited to learn a lot of new tips and tricks today. So before we get started into all the good stuff, I'm going to share my screen real quick. And we're going to talk about all things the Nomadic Network. Hopefully you guys can all see this. Okay, so for those of you that are new, the Nomadic Network kicked off right around this time last year. We did in-person events. It was fantastic. It was a way to connect with like-minded travelers in our community and just, swap stories, share travel adventures we had that lasted for a couple months. And then, as you know, the pandemic hit. So we brought everything in virtually, but that's also worked out really well. We've had such a variety of speakers talking about a range of topics. And besides being able to connect with our local community, now everyone's been able to connect around the world with other travelers. And I know there have been a lot of wonderful connections and friendships that have come out of this. So that's one of the great blessings, I think, for 2020. A couple housekeeping items to keep in mind for today. If you're comfortable, you can turn your camera on. We love seeing all of your smiling faces. So feel free to turn those on. It helps keep us engaged as well. I will keep everyone muted for the duration of the presentation. And then following the presentation, we'll have a Q&A. So if you think of any questions while we're talking, you can just write the word question and then write your question next to it. And I'll keep track of this and make sure they all get answered at the end. And then feel free to use the chat to just connect with everyone, and you can share any tips or share any relevant experiences you have. There will be a replay of this for Patreon members, and I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. And then just know that the speakers do this out of the kindness of their heart. And we're really grateful that we have them here to help out and kind of keep the Nomadic Network going. So thank you to all of them. So I mentioned briefly the Patreon community is an exclusive group we have that you can join. It's just a small monthly membership fee. You can find more info on that link included there. Basically, this is a place where you can get past TNN event replays. So if you've missed one of the events, you can always go back to this and watch it on your own time. Nomadic Matt actually shares some personal stories that he doesn't normally share on the blog, so you get the first view of that. There's lots of free goodies such as signed books and guides, and there's an exclusive Facebook group as well. I'm part of the Patreon community, and I have to say it's wonderful to be a part of this, and just a small way I feel like we can give back to the Nomadic Map team and the Nomadic Network. So definitely check that out. No pressure, but something interesting if you so desire. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and now I have the honor to introduce our speaker for today. Her name is Preethi. She's an Indian American currently living in San Francisco. By day, she's a marketing professional, and by night, she's a travel blogger and photographer. And I think she's proof that you can have a full-time job and still be a travel blogger, which is fantastic. She works with tourism boards and hotels to create their marketing content. She's very passionate about photography. And recently she led a group of 9 first-time people on an 8-day hut-to-hut trek to the Annapurna Base Camp. And this was in partnership with a local outfitter in Nepal. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Preethi, and you can talk about, and she's going to share with us all about these 5 wonderful hut-to-hut treks that she has done around the world and inspire us hopefully to do the same. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. I am super, super excited about being here today and talking about this with all of you. Frankly, I'm here in California in a lockdown, and so for the rest of the holidays, honestly. And so this is honestly great for me to just kind of reminisce with everybody. So here are the 5 great hut-to-hut treks worth doing around the world, in my opinion. 5 hikes, 3 continents. Okay, so this is what I'm going to walk you through. If I can actually, yes, there you go. Okay, so as Laura said, I'm an Indian American. I'm currently based out of San Francisco. San Francisco has been home to me for the last 10 years. But I was born in India and I moved here when I was a kid with my mom and dad. So I've actually lived in Michigan, Minneapolis, Missouri before I came to California. So I've always been a little bit of a vagabond. I've kind of dabbled in different things. I've dabbled in theater and the arts. I've also been a professional dancer for a few years, but I think throughout all this, travel has always been my first love. And it all started with my first trip to Kenya, but eventually I started doing more and more outdoors activities and outdoors vacations, and it morphed into these hut-to-hut trek active vacays, as my husband calls them. So one of the reasons that I think I really started doing a lot of these hut-to-huts was it was a way to get my husband to actually travel with me, because he is not a camper. So I couldn't get him into some of these vacations because he was like, I'm not, hiking all day and I'm not going to camp. So I needed to find an alternative. And that's kind of how I discovered the whole hut-to-hut active vacation. A lot of people ask me this question: why do you like hiking? It's so painful. Um, yes, hiking can be painful, but it can also be really, really rewarding. And these are 2 quotes that I can really relate to, that resonated with me. And hiking is a bit like life, right? It kind of requires you to put one foot in front of the other again and again and again. Every day it forces you to show up, but it also gives you that incredible opportunity. If you can be present throughout the entirety of the trek or your life journey, you can witness beauty every step of the way, right? Not just at the summit. And it has powerful cardio workout. It's a powerful cardio workout with many benefits. So that's one, many reasons why I love hiking. So let's dive into what a hut-to-hut hike is. A lot of people haven't quite heard of a hut-to-hut hike, what it is here, especially in the States. So they're really just basic structures, like you can see in my photos. They're strategically placed huts on mountain trails where you can kind of sleep comfortably after you're done with a really long hike. So it's really more for long distance hiking. And the nice part about it is it only fits about, say, 10 to 50 hikers. Your accommodations are in dorm beds, so you seldom have access to a private room. Although the hut on the photo on the first photo on the left that you're looking at, we did have access to a private room. It was really nice. But some of these huts also don't have electricity. Almost all of them will have bathrooms, but they're shared bathrooms, and some of them won't have hot water. So I'm the type of girl where if there's no hot water, I'm not taking a shower. The good news is that I don't smell. So with that said, that's essentially what a hut-to-hut is. But my husband loves these treks, so they're actually quite comfortable. Okay, let's talk about the anatomy of a hut-to-hut hike. So I've done all of these before, so I can kind of walk you through the pros and cons, and then you can decide what's right for you. And you might even decide all of this is right for you, depending on what stage you're in your hiking journey, right? So you've got the guided hike where you simply show up. You guys, this is like a luxury vacation. You show up, well, you gotta walk, and sometimes you're walking uphill, but that's pretty much it. Everything else is taken care of for you. You're carrying a day backpack though, but don't get scared. All that's gonna be in your day backpack is probably a few layers. You're going to have probably some water, some snacks, but everything else will be planned out for you. In a semi-guided hike, you're still gonna have, you're not gonna have any guides, you're not gonna have porters, it's still gonna be you. And you're still going to be carrying only a day backpack. But the hotels or the huts that you're staying in can help you transfer your luggage every day so you don't have to carry that. And your accommodations are taken care of as well. You can plan this with the company who'll take care of this for you. So again, you're just showing up and you just have to hike. and your accommodations are taken care of, they'll also plan the route for you. They'll give you maps so that you kind of know where to go as well, okay? In a self-guided hike, you're on your own. You got to research everything. You got to figure out where you want to stay. You got to carry your luggage with you. So that's a self-guided hike. So let's now take a look at some of these examples of, you know, each of these type of hikes, and let's see maybe what could be a good fit for you guys. So the first one I want to talk about is my first, you know, it was my first long distance hike. It was Machu Picchu, and it was my first trek, long distance trek with my husband. It was a very, very exciting destination. It had been on my bucket list for a really long time. Now, Machu Picchu is actually in Peru, and it's in South America. And these are the ancient Inca ruins, 7,000 feet above sea level, often, you know, referred to as the Lost City. It was discovered only in 1911. So a lot of archaeologists say that, hey, you know, they think that about 1,200 people could have likely lived in this area, but because it was so far removed from the rest of Peru, it's likely that it was more of a retreat for Incan rulers. What you need to know about trekking to Machu Picchu is that Machu Picchu is something that you can only do with a tour company because it's permit based. So this decision was taken a long time back to prevent over tourism. And so only a set number of people are allowed to be on the Inca Trail every day. The distance is about 25 miles. It's split into 4 days, but the real kicker here is the altitude, right? You're at 4,200 meters. That's close to 14,000 feet. And if you're coming from sea level, like I am from San Francisco, that's a huge deal. So altitude sickness could impact you or not, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Difficulty, I would say it's moderate, only because of Dead Woman's Pass. If you've done this trek, and I'm curious if you guys can drop it into the chat, how many people have actually done this trek? How many have, you know, been to Machu Picchu, done the 4-day trek? I'd be curious to know. You all know about Dead Woman's Pass. Everybody talks about it. It's super intimidating. It's, I think about, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's a 9-mile day, depending on how your company structures this day. So we'll talk about that in a second. And then this is what I would call a tent to tent. It is not really a hut to hut, it's more of a tent to tent. So you're camping every night and you're camping in different areas of the trail. You're not setting up your tent because your porters are doing that for you. But it's a great budget trek. You can finish it, you know, anywhere between $500 to $1,000, just depending on who you're trekking with, including what you want to give as tips to your porters and guides. So you're going to fly into Cusco, which used to be the capital of the Inca Empire, and it's now the gateway to Machu Picchu. And the best season I would recommend is between May and September, because you want to avoid the rainy season. So this was us, you know, with my group. I don't know who these people were. We just met them and we all turned out to be great friends at the end of the trip. So there were a good bunch of folks from all over the world, honestly. And this was our first entry into Machu Picchu that morning. So like I said, you're only a certain number of people are allowed in every day. When it's separated into 2 tickets, so it's morning and afternoon. I chose the morning slot because I wanted to get there early in the morning, which means you're waking up at 3:45 a.m. to get ready for this trek. So the night before, you're super excited. You want to go to bed early. I mean, you have to go to bed early. You'll get to your tent every day by 2 o'clock, and then you have nothing to do but just relax in front of all this gorgeous scenery, right? So we're in bed by 10 o'clock after our, you know, fancy meal. The porters set up everything for you with their tables, their chairs. They set up everything for you in a tent. Your meals are delicious. That's why I call this a luxury trek. And then you go to bed and you're not able to sleep because there's all that adrenaline rushing through you. You know you have to wake up at 3:45. So I'm trying my best to sleep and it starts raining outside and I'm thinking, oh, this is so romantic. I'm in this tent cuddled up to my husband and I'm gonna wake up at 3:45 and go to Machu Picchu. And then I feel the droplets on my forehead, right? And I'm like, it's raining in the tent. I mean, it's on my forehead. And I'm like, oh my God, it's not stopping. What am I gonna do? So my husband and I look at each other and we're like, should we like change our positions a little bit? Will that help? Well, the tent is kind of small and it doesn't really help and we don't really sleep well. We still wake up at 3:45, fresh as daisies because the adrenaline is pumping, you know, we're great. And we get to Machu Picchu, everything is phenomenal, right? So it's kind of like life. You just never know what happens, even though it's guided and everything. Who knows what happened with those tents? But we made it and it was fantastic. So a lot of people ask me, what's the big deal about this hike? What's the wow factor, right? Well, I'll say for me, the wow factor is really in the architecture and the history. You're not just sailing and, you know, kind of strolling through these mountains. The Incas were remarkable. They were engineering geniuses, right? They had an amazing, remarkable empire. And you'll also, when you get into Cusco, you'll see a lot of Spanish colonial architecture in a lot of the wooden balconies. You'll see the Incan wall ruins, and it's really a combination of Andean traditions and Peruvian culture. So when you're actually in Cusco, you'll see a lot of people speaking Quechua as well as Spanish. I also really love the Dead Woman's Pass. For me, that was a huge highlight because it's kind of, this trek for that day is almost, I think, about 9 miles for the day, but that trek alone is about 4 to 5 hours uphill. And the first photo on the left, that's literally some of the steps that you're going to be climbing up. That's really steep. But when you get up to the top and you see it, you know, where it says the 13,700 feet or whatever, and there's the sign that says Dead Woman's Pass, and you've made it, it's an incredible accomplishment that you should definitely be proud of. This was my husband's first trekking experience ever. And you know, he was wowed. So he said this was an amazing trek. So great introductory trek. If it's not on your bucket list, put it on your bucket list. It's worth it. And it's just beautiful to walk on the Inca Trail. So with that said, I want to address the altitude issue. So a lot of people ask me about this, and I know a lot of people do get altitude sickness. So what's interesting in Peru is as you're hiking, what the locals do is that they'll give you coca leaves. So you can chew on this. In fact, I felt like I was constantly chewing on this hike. That's because I was chewing on the coca leaves to help me with, you know, any kind of sickness that I might get, because I was so petrified I would get altitude sickness, whatever that was. I'd never experienced it, right? And then in the mornings when you wake up, your porters and your guides, they'll make you coca tea. So you kind of have that, then you have your coca leaves, and the Incas used the coca leaves actually for ailments like headaches, for stomach aches. So that's another, it's a great option. And then if you want to get a prescription from your doctor for altitude sickness, because if you know you have it and you want to be safe and you want to get a prescription, that's another option as well. All right. So this is an example of a full guided hike, great budget option. Now I want to talk to you about a second trek. This, again, my husband accompanied me on this one. And this was in Switzerland. It's called the Bernese Oberland. Again, I want to see in the chat window if you guys can talk about, or if anyone can let me know if you guys have been to the Bernese Oberland. I'd love to know if you've been to this region. If you've been to Interlaken, if you've been to the Jungfrau region, if you've been to Wengen, Muren, Gimmelwald, Grindelwald, or Lauterbrunnen. Any of these towns, you've been to the Bernese Oberland. So that's the region. Again, wonderful introductory trek along structured trails. Each day you're trekking from hut to hut through little mountain villages like this photo here, a cute little mountain village. What you need to know about trekking the Bernese Oberland. All right, so you can do the self-guided, you can do this guided, you can do the semi-guided. So my husband and I had done Machu Picchu completely guided, and we said, hey, it was great. It was a fantastic hike. Let's now go on a sort of semi-guided, you know, where we don't really have the porters and the guides. Let's just do it on our own. But we were a little nervous. You know, we hadn't really done this before. The Alps, I mean, we were just new to the Alps. We haven't been brought up in the mountains. Yeah, you know, I grew up in India. There were no mountains where I grew up. Haven't really done a lot of outdoor stuff, you know, as a child. So we weren't confident. So we said, semi-guided it is. Let's try it. The distance on this trek was 5 days. It's a pretty easy trek. You'll stay in hotels. You can also stay in huts as well. So we chose a combination of both. The cost can be anywhere from $1,200 to $5,000, depending on the kind of hotels that you want to choose. To give you an idea, a hut here is about, say, $70. It'll include meals. We splurged on a Swiss rail pass for $250 at that time because we wanted to take advantage of the fact that this was our first time in Switzerland. And so we wanted to see some other stuff for which we'd need to take cable cars or a cogwheel, and the Swiss rail pass will cover that. So we would also need to take a train from, say, Zurich to Interlaken. The Swiss rail pass will also cover that. All right, so you're going to be flying into Zurich. The best time is July through September because you don't want to trek if there's snow on the trails, because sometimes the trails will close. So you want to pick summer. September is a great month. It's a little tip I'm giving you. The tourists will be gone by now, and it's actually really nice, and you won't meet that many people. But July, August is your peak time, okay? All right, so you're gonna be hiking through alpine scenery like this. Everywhere you turn to, it's going to look gorgeous, especially if you go, you know, in August, September, it's fantastic. I wanted to mention that you can also throw in an extra day at your hotel or hut like we did. And what we did was we took the cogwheel through the Eiger Mountain to the Jungfrau, which is the highest railway station in Europe. We got off of that cogwheel and then we did a little mini hike in the snow to a tiny little hut that was perched at the very edge overlooking the major peaks in that area. And we had lunch there. So the major peaks in the Bernese Oberland are Jungfrau, Monk, and Eiger. All right, so those are your peaks. And that's why we kind of did the whole cogwheel, because I wanted to go see what it felt like to be on top of the world, as they say in Switzerland. So this is a little village of Muren. We hiked down here to this little village and we stayed in a hotel for a night. The hotel is this is what a hotel looks like. It's kind of in Switzerland, they call it a chalet. So it's not really what you would imagine a hotel to look like. You know, it's not like some tall vertical building. It's these cute, charming little structures that they call chalets, and we stayed here for a night. The nice part about adding an extra day here was I wanted to go to the Schildhorn. Has anyone heard of the Schildhorn? There's a revolving restaurant on top of the Schildhorn. It's called the Piz Gloria. And this, several scenes were filmed here in the James Bond movie, Her Majesty's Secret Service. So that's where the scenes were filmed. And so I really wanted to go up to the Schildhorn. And again, you get fantastic views of Monk, Eiger, and Jungfrau. So we spent a day doing that. That was our rest day, if you will. All right, so that was Muren. And then one of my favorite parts about this is the huts where we stayed at. So this is Obersteinberg. It's a very, very remote hut in the Lauterbrunnen Valley. And it took us 5 hours to hike up here. The peaks that you're seeing in this photograph are the Jungfrau peak. It's very overwhelming for this California girl because we don't have mountains this huge in California, all right? At least I don't hike around such mountains. So this was very overwhelming for me because as I'm hiking uphill, these mountains are huge and they're all around with gushing waterfalls and, you know, cows with their cowbells, and it's just beautiful. This hut does not have electricity. It does bring you hot water in a little pot so you can clean up. You're dining by candlelight with any other trekkers that might be up there. You do have a shared bathroom. No showers, all right? It turned out to be the most magical stay for my bougie husband who said, oh my gosh, after COVID is done, you know where I wanna go? I wanna go to Obersteinberg. I literally fell off my chair. I'm like, wow. So yes, because look at the photo. And I know my photo doesn't do justice, but this was just a gem of a stay. It's called Obersteinberg, and it was honestly one of my favorite parts of this trek. So the one thing that I do wanna mention about, you know, doing the semi-guided is everybody will tell you that, oh, this is great. You could do the self-guided, semi-guided. There's signs everywhere. There are signs everywhere. But when we were getting to Obersteinberg, there was, you know, a couple of forks in the path, in the trail, and we don't know where to go. There's no signs anywhere. There's nobody anywhere. That's the beauty sometimes of doing this on your own. You could just go for hours or not see anybody but a bunch of cows with their cowbells. It's beautiful on one side, and on the other side, when you're trying to figure out where to go, it can be a little intimidating, right? So luckily for us, you do pass, you know, huts on the way that you can stop and kind of ask and say, I'm trying to get to Obersteinberg. You can look at your maps, but my husband and I were not very confident, you know, in those days. We weren't the best at navigating through the mountainside. So it's doable. We did it. It's not too scary, but I just wanted to say you're not going to see signs everywhere. You're going to have to just understand, you know, how to sort of navigate and look at your maps and understand how to read that. So the wow factor for this, of course, was staying in Obersteinberg, but also the photo that you're looking here is Lauterbrunnen Valley. And if there are any Lord of the Rings fans, it is said that J.R. Tolkien, the author, used Lauterbrunnen for his inspiration for the Valley of Rivendell, apparently. And I can see why. I don't know if you guys can see the similarities, but I can. So Lauterbrunnen is a magical village. You end up doing a lot of hikes around here as well. And this was a stopover for us in a cute little chalet. So that is Bernese Oberlin, semi-guided. You kind of do everything on your own, your accommodations. You have input into where you want to stay. You can work with the company. We work with alpine hikers for this one. And you can work with them and tell them like, hey, I want to stay in a hut here for 2 nights. I want to do a hotel with an extra day in between. They'll work with you on that. And then they work with the taxi service that actually transports your luggage if you're not comfortable carrying your bag every day. You still have to have a day backpack because the weather does change. You'll need your layers. You want to have water and you'll need some snacks. All right. So you'll still need to have that. Okay. I want to shift now to another trek in Europe. I don't know how many of you have heard of the Tour de Mont Blanc. It's not very popular. A lot of people haven't heard about it in the States. So I'm curious if you guys can just type it in the chat. I'd love to know if, how many of you have done this. But the Tour de Mont Blanc, or the TMB as it's called, is one of the most popular multi-day treks in Europe, if not the world. The Mont Blanc Massif itself lies along the French-Italian border, and it stretches into Switzerland. So you're not looking to summit anything, but it's actually, you're going around Mont Blanc. So you're actually walking from France to Italy to Switzerland. How exciting is that, right? This is Chamonix, the little ski town in France on the left where you start your trek. Chamonix was something that I'd heard about maybe years and years ago. And I always thought to myself, oh, I wonder if I'll ever go to Chamonix. And then when I decided to do Mont Blanc, voila, Chamonix was like the first stop, apparently. Who would have thought? It's a charming town, but then again, in Europe, I mean, every town is charming. And on the right, you'll see a scene that is a little, I won't say it's common, but it was fun to see this, you know, calf feeding. It was great. I took a lot of videos. I wish I could share it on this platform, but it was a lot of fun to see this. So what do you need to know about trekking the Tour de Mont Blanc, right? It's, what's the big deal? All right, it's 110 miles. This is probably the longest trek I've ever done. And it's about 11 days. Altitude is not a big deal. Difficulty level, I would say it's easy. It's a combination of huts and hotels again. Cost can be anywhere up to say $4,000 for the entire thing. You want to fly into Geneva and then you're going to go to Chamonix. The best season, in my opinion, again, is July to September. September is my favorite month for these treks in Europe. So the TMB, we decided to do this completely guided. My husband's reasoning was, look, it's a long multi-distance trek. We've never done 11 days, you know. Why don't we do this guided? Because you're going through 3 different countries. I'm not so sure. What if something happens on the way? Maybe we should do this guided. And we said, all right, let's give this a shot. Let's do the TMB. Let's do it guided. And that's how it began. So this was our group. Again, we have no idea who we're going to get, but they turned out to be incredible from different walks of life. I met Luke and Kelly, this couple from Louisiana. They're small business owners. And one day Luke told us on the hike, he said, you know, one day I had a dream about this Indian spiritual leader. And then I went to India and I met him. And ever since then, I follow him. You know, he's a great philosopher. And he mentioned his name. And my husband was so startled because we found out that my husband and his family grew up with the teachings of this Indian spiritual leader. I mean, who would have thought? Right? These guys are from Louisiana, and he follows an Indian spiritual leader. And then you have Julie on the far right. I met her, she's from New Zealand, and she goes to India every year for an Ayurvedic cleanse to my hometown. And she goes to an ashram where my family goes every year for the same treatment. So it was so interesting for me to see how much we all kind of really just had in common, even though we're from different parts of the world, and we're here together for this incredible hike. So again, the Tour de Mont Blanc, you're going to be hiking through amazing scenery. You're going to see beautiful lakes, reflections. You'll have valleys, wildflowers, you name it. You'll stop in little huts along the way, and depending on which country you're in, you could be in France today, Italy tomorrow, Switzerland the next day. Your snacks can differ. You know, it can range from a Swiss chocolate to a French pastry, maybe the Italian cappuccino. I'm telling you, the highlight of this trek, you guys, is the cuisine. All right. One night you're dining on Italian cuisine and pasta, pizza. And let me tell you, you can afford to eat because you're trekking so much every day. And the Alps are no joke. Everything is a pass on the Tour de Mont Blanc. By that, I mean a mountain pass. You have to cross a mountain pass. So you're always hiking uphill. right? There is no flat ground. Maybe on the right, that photo is actually flat, like for all of 5 minutes, and then you're hiking uphill again. So trust me, when it comes to eating, I ate everything I could get my hands on because it was the best food in all three countries, no doubt. Wow factor here. All right. Well, this hike is honestly only 10 days, but we threw in an extra day. So believe me, after hiking for about the first 5 days, for about, say, 6 to 8 hours a day, you're going to wake up on the sixth day morning and you're going to say, I'm not hiking anymore. I'm done. My hips are not cooperating. I don't want to walk. I don't care how pretty this whole thing is. I'm done. That's when you insert a rest day and you go to a spa. So here we are in Italy, in a little village called Courmayeur. I would never have gone there ever because nobody goes to Courmayeur to sightsee, right? Not that I know of. So this is a town that we happen to be in anyway, and it's a spa town. So we take a taxi, 10 minutes. We're here at this beautiful spa, which looks like a Tuscan villa. And you've got treatments that I've never, heard of, treatment rooms that I've never seen. It's like no spa in the US for sure. You've got jacuzzis indoors, outside. You've got treatment rooms. You've got clay rooms. You've got special rooms for your feet, where you have to walk through these cold and hot pools that are there to rejuvenate tired, aching feet. And I had tired, aching feet by day 5. We all did. So it was fantastic. So that's kind of what we did for our rest day. And if you look at the photo, the third photo from the left, you pass these little Italian towns with these pink Pepto-Bismol like churches, and they are so charming. How could you not fall in love? And then the next minute, you've got the scenery like the photo on the right. And I did not do anything with that color. That watercolor is exactly how it looked. And that's how stunning the Tour de Mont Blanc is. So very little drop-offs on this hike if you're afraid of heights. There were a couple spots that I was a little, scared about, and I kind of like crouched down to the ground, and my guide Hayden, a very badass guy from Canada, looked at me and he was like, what are you doing? And I said, I'm gonna crawl because I'm so scared I'm gonna fall and slide down this mountain. I can't take the heights. I never knew I was afraid of heights until some of these experiences, but he taught me to stand up, stand tall, put one foot in front of the other. Trust your feet, trust your body. That was the biggest lesson I'm learning on my treks, is to trust yourself. And that was really important. So that's the Tour de Mont Blanc. It's a beautiful hike from France to Italy to Switzerland. Spectacular every time you cross the border Alps. I just got goosebumps all over every time we had to do that. Okay. So from the guided to the semi-guided, I want to now bring us to 100% self-guided trek. For those of you thinking, oh my God, I don't want to go with porters and guides and I can't do all this. I need a self-guided trek. That's the W circuit in the Torres del Paine National Park in Chile. Okay, one of my all-time favorite treks. It's called the W circuit because it runs up 3 valleys, creating the W shape. Again, wonderful introductory trek that I did a lot of research on because I wanted to make sure there were no drop-offs, that I could do this on my own. And yeah, everything that I read said that I could do this on my own. So I said, okay, I can do this. Let's go. So it ends at the base of the spectacular towers. And each day you trek from hut to hut through the national park. And it is really a hut. Say hi to the guanacos on the left. Torres del Paine is a national park. So you're going to see a lot of amazing wildlife. You might even spot a fox, a puma, an Andean condor like I did. If only I had better, camera gear back in those days, I would have, taken a photograph of that perhaps. But what I took was so tiny that I decided not to show it. But the wildlife is amazing. And so what do you need to know about trekking the W circuit? So this one was self-guided. It's 50 miles across 5 days. It's not too bad. Altitude, nothing to really talk about. Difficulty, it's easy in my opinion, except there's that one day. By now I've realized every trek has that one day that's a little more difficult, right? So in this one, it's called the French Valley, 12 miles. All right, I'll get to that in a minute. Your stay is in huts, so you don't have to worry about carrying your bedding. This is the backpack that I carried. It's a 60-liter Gregory pack. It had everything in it. I didn't have to worry about my sleeping bag or my tent or anything like that. The cost for this trek, super budget friendly in my opinion. It's about $500 for everything. I flew into Santiago in Chile, and then I had to take a flight down to Puerto Natales and take a bus and everything before I could get to the national park. Best season is the summer in South America, which is December to February. I, of course, had to go in spring because I didn't want to, I didn't want the crowds. So I decided to go late October, and I will tell you what happened. That's why I put down there in my little bullet, weather is unpredictable. Maybe if you go in summer, it's more predictable. I don't know. Okay, so here's the infamous French Valley. 12 miles. We started at 8 a.m. in the morning. I thought it was fine. My husband decided not to come on this trip. He couldn't make it, so I went with a friend of mine. And we got up at 8 a.m. We grabbed breakfast at the hut, and we packed up everything. We started hiking. I thought it was enough. We would make good time. And we got to the first portion, which was the Italian camp. We get there, we put our backpacks down, and I asked the ranger there, I said, hey, can we go into the French Valley? How's the weather? Because it had been raining all morning. And he said, not good. Today's not a good day. So go hike up a little bit if you want to just see how it is. So we said, okay. So the photo on the right shows us hiking a little bit, and we get to the Francis Glacier. We sit there, we listen to the sounds of the ice breaking. Everything looks so surreal and beautiful and magical, right? With those clouds hanging down there. And we thought, well, the weather looks okay. Let's just go a little bit more. So what we did at Italian camp when we got there, we took our big backpacks off and we set it down, right? Because we're only going to go a little bit. So we came to the little bit, we saw the Francis Glacier. We thought, oh, it looks great. Let's just keep going. So we kept hiking. And to the left, we hiked through a river. We hiked through a lush forest. And then we got to this point where we're almost at the end of the French Valley. That's otherwise, I believe, called the Britannica Lookout. For those of you who have done that, I think you'll remember this in the French Valley. So we got to this point, and we looked around and we saw the clouds. They were kind of looking menacing. They looked a little, it still looked beautiful. It just looked otherworldly, right? It was nothing like I'd ever seen before. So we took all the photos that we wanted to take, and we decided to head back when it started snowing really bad. And as you guys can see in these photos, I don't have a backpack, which means I don't have water, I don't have food, and I don't have gloves. I didn't take gloves with me. I left it in Santiago in my hostel locker because I thought, oh my God, it's gonna be too much weight in my backpack. I can't do this, so I don't want it, right? Big mistake, because I was cold, freezing. I have no water, I have no snacks, and we hadn't had lunch. So we left at 8 a.m. and by now it was almost, 2:30, 3 p.m. We hadn't even returned yet. So rookie mistakes. What not to do when you hike to Chile's Tourist Alpine, all right? So we got down into the Italian camp. We had to hike down these big, large boulders, which is what makes the French Valley a little difficult. A lot of people might say it is the most difficult part of this trek. And I did not heed the other bloggers' warnings about your knees taking a hammering on the way down, because I thought, oh, I'm strong, I've worked out, I've trained, I'll be fine. And by the end of that trek, my knees were gone, and so were my friends' knees. We should have taken Advil that night. It would have helped with the inflammation. We didn't. But we got to the Italian camp, grabbed our backpack, wolfed down our lunch, and we had to get to our destination that night before the sun set. We had to get to the hut. So we're hiking and we're hiking and we're hiking. And again, in a self-guided hike, people always say, you've got plenty of signs, you'll be fine. There were these forks and we didn't know which one to take. And we're like, there's nobody around us. We just kept trekking. We just used our instinct and we said, okay, it's gotta be this path. It's gotta be, let's just keep going. We made it. About 9:15 p.m., we walked into the hut, and the front desk said, we were just about to send a search party for you. The sun had just set. You weren't here yet. We were getting worried. Guess what? We didn't have headlamps either. Rookie mistake. Again, what not to do. Always carry a headlamp, always have water, always have snacks, wherever you're going for however long you think you're going. All right, so that was my story there. This is saying hello to the Gray Glacier in Torres del Paine. The sister glacier to this is the Perito Moreno, which is in Argentina. If you guys have gone to Argentina, it's the backside of this. And you might have even trekked it. I trekked the Argentina glacier, so I did not do it here, but you can do it here if you want to just throw in an extra day. Your hut is actually located here, one of your huts. So you can spend like the morning and the evening just hanging out by this Great Glacier and getting a super amazing close-up of this. So wow factor for this hike, I mean, come on. This is the culmination of the entire 4 days. It's the Taurus, right? You're coming here to see the 3 granite peaks overlooking that beautiful turquoise lake. People die to come up here for sunrise, right? So we left at like 4 a.m. from our hut. We're gonna see sunrise. We're gonna capture this amazing photo that I've been seeing on the internet for years and years and years. And of course, it had to snow because I chose to go late spring where it should not have been snowing, but it did snow terribly so that morning. Visibility was very bad. It was so bad that we couldn't see our path up on this trek. It was a whiteout. I was scared. I didn't open my mouth. I didn't say anything because my friend didn't say anything. And there was another girl from the hut that we had just met from, I don't know where she was from. She was from some other part of the world. And she decided to come with us and she didn't say anything. There were no rangers, nobody to talk to. We just went. We just followed our instinct and I was scared. But we made it to the top. We stood here for 5 minutes because it was snowing really bad. My hands were freezing. I didn't have my gloves, right? Stood here for 5 minutes, took our photos, looked at this beautiful scenery. I prayed and prayed and prayed that the cloud cover would lift and I would see the 3 majestic granite peaks. Nothing happened and we just turned around and we left. So was I disappointed? Yes. As in life, sometimes, you know, these things happen. You don't have any control over it. And it's not always maybe the destination. It's also sometimes the journey that can teach you something about yourself, right? And you learn from these lessons. And that's what hiking can really teach you. And hey, a lot of people looking at this photo will say, that's a great photo. That looks pretty beautiful. You know, I mean, it's still a great view. And you're right. It's still beautiful, even covered in snow. It's not what I wanted to see, but it was still beautiful. So this was a fantastic self-guided hike that I would recommend to anybody. There was only one little drop off at the very end. Somebody asked me today in my blog, can you tell me more about this drop off? Because I have a fear of heights. Literally, you take 2 steps and you're done. That's how small the drop off is. And it might even have been fixed by now. I don't know, but it's only on one side. It's not both sides. So something to be aware of. And that is the W Circuit and the Taurus Alpine. And I think finally we come to the last hut-to-hut trek, which is the Annapurna Base Camp. So when people think base camp, people get so intimidated because, well, I think first of all, when we think base camp, we think Everest, right? I've honestly never wanted to do the Everest. And I know there are some of you on here who have done the Everest and I'm sure it's fabulous. But somebody once told me about the Annapurna many years ago, and they said it's less crowded, it's more pristine, it's stunning, and it's stuck in my head. And I just knew I had to do the Annapurna Base Camp, and this turned out to be last October. So I worked with a company to lead a tour there actually last year. It's another wonderful introductory trek. I would not call it intermediate by any means. I know it sounds intimidating. It's located in the Himalayas in Nepal. And at the end of the trek, you're going to come to this view in my photo, it's at sunrise. I think it's about 5 in the morning, 5 a.m. in the morning. And you're going to end at the base of these majestic peaks like the Annapurna 1, Annapurna South, Macha Pukri, Hunchali. These are some of the peaks that you're going to see on your trek. So what do you need to know about trekking for the ABC? Well, the distance is 8 days. Your altitude, we're kind of back to that 13,550 feet. You know, remember Machu Picchu, Peru, except there's no coca leaves here for your altitude sickness. So you got to come up with a different strategy. And the Nepalese answer to coca leaves is ginger tea. Literally every day, it was ginger tea for lunch, ginger tea for dinner, ginger tea for snacks. I had a lot of ginger tea, you guys. I don't know that it really helped me because, okay, I'll get to that story later. But difficulty-wise, I would say the ABC it's pretty easy. It's not a difficult hike. You're going to be staying in huts. These are also called tea houses. I'm also referring to this as a hut-to-hut. It just sounds better than to say tea house to tea house. So that's why I'm calling this a hut-to-hut. But they're called tea houses. The cost is around, again, it depends. This was a guided trek. And so it was around $1,200 for everything, but you could do it for way less if you decide not to go with a Sherpa, not to go with any porters. One of the reasons I decided to do this last year with a guide was 1, I was leading it, and 2, because of the avalanche that had happened in this region a few years ago. For those of you who remember, a lot of I think Everest hikers, some did not survive in that region, and it did impact the Annapurna side as well. Nobody died, but I think some of the trails were lost, and I think they had to redo some of those trails. So that was kind of stuck in my head, and I thought, you know what, if something happens up there, it seems to be a region where I would be more comfortable with the Sherpa at least, right? So that's kind of why I did what I did. The best season, again, I think there are some companies that do go in March, April, if I'm not mistaken, but I did this in October and it was beautiful. Days were warm, evenings were cold. It was absolutely gorgeous. So here's some of the terrain that you're going to see. I think I crossed about 2 to 3 suspension bridges, which is really exciting. It's not at all scary. Very, very exciting to go through them. You'll walk through some valleys with, some beautiful lakes and wildflowers. On the right, you get to have traditional Nepalese food, or otherwise known as dal bhat. Dal means lentils. And then you have some vegetables around and some rice and pickles. But look, if you get tired of this, know that you can have ramen noodles, Korean noodles, French fries, even yak meat, which I tried a little bit. Psychologically, I just couldn't wrap my brain around it, but it tasted a little bit like steak, I think, from what I remember. All right, so otherwise it's just vegetarian cuisine. And we were told that you could have meat up here in the mountains, but because it's not really, it's not recommended. They just said for, your own, they're not sure how sometimes the meat is being prepared or where it's coming from. And they said generally if you're visiting and you're hiking up in the mountains, it's not recommended. For those of you who have done this ABC, I'd be curious if you could type in the chat window, have you had meat up here when you're hiking? I'm just curious if you've had it and what your experience has been. You're going to be staying in villages like this. In a little tea house. Those are all, different houses that you're seeing over here. And so when you're staying in villages like this, guess what? You get to see a slice of local life. And on the right are families that you're going to see as you're trekking through. You get a glimpse into their living room or the shop that they're managing. And they're also friendly. You can't speak one another's languages, but they love when you give them something like cookies, or if you buy them something from the shop next door. The kids just love that. We spent some time playing a ball with some of the kids on one of the days, and it was just really nice to be able to interact with the locals. The center photo, by the way, is me at base camp, and look at how those peaks, the Annapurna is towering behind me, right? And I'm so tiny. That's the other thing about trekking. It makes you feel so small. It makes you realize that your problems you think are so magnified are maybe not really that big. And then on the left, the other part about coming to Nepal and doing the treks here is you get exposed to culture, right? And how exciting is that to be exposed to a different culture from what you're used to, because now it's an opportunity to learn. And this is what is called an agori. And these are, there's some controversy around them. I'm not going to go too much into detail. I'll let you Google them. But basically, they're a small group of people who engage in post-mortem tantric rituals. Sometimes people say they, don't go too close to them, don't talk to them, they can do black magic on you or whatever, but they're very interesting. You should actually Google them. They're very interesting. They're found in Nepal and also in India, especially if you've been to Varanasi for Holi, you will meet them there. So this was kind of something that I really enjoyed about Nepal is staying back after the trek and just going around Kathmandu and going to some of the temples and learning more about the Buddhist culture and the Buddhist philosophy was extremely enlightening for me. So let's get to the huts or the tea houses. All right. So the one on the left, I remember when I stayed here, it was extremely rainy. And I have to mention that I was hiking up to this hut one day and I sweat a lot, you guys. I'm a sweater on these treks, all right? I am drenched. Now I'm telling you this because as I was trekking, I thought, I felt something under my armpit one day. And I touched it and it was kind of like a little slimy, like how when like your sweat kind of, I don't know how to explain this, but I was thinking to myself, okay, maybe my sweat coagulated with my sunscreen to create this like uber slimy little thing over there. And then I thought, no, it's really slimy. So my friend who was hiking next to me lifted my armpit and she said, okay, it's a leech. So I turned around and I very graciously called out for Tikaram, our guide. And I said, Tikaram, I think there's something under my armpit. Can you just please take it out before it sucks all the blood out of me? So Tikaram, the short, man, comes running towards me and he goes, okay, I'll take it out. And it's a leech. He takes it out, he throws it away. And then I said, Tikaram, you gotta stop the bleeding. And he goes, no problem, no problem. And he literally just takes some leaves off a plant and he just pats it under my armpit and goes, just hold it there, you're fine. So I'm holding it there and I'm trekking for like a while. And I'm like, okay, I guess I can't really get like a Band-Aid or anything like that. He's like, no, you don't need that. This is fine, this is it. Trust the locals, just do what they tell you, you're fine. It was fine, nothing happened, right? So that's it. Just this something to be aware of. You shouldn't actually be getting leeches at that altitude. So it was very surprising that I actually got one under my armpit. Do not ask me how. To this day, I don't understand that. To the right is the tea hut, the last tea hut, or the last tea hut that you're gonna stay at before you wake up to go to base camp. And what you're looking at is the Annapurna. It's the Annapurna Base Camp. And can you guys see the trail there? That's the trail that you take to get there. So you're so close. That's why the adrenaline is pumping the night before. You're so close to your final destination. And this is it. 3:45 a.m. in the morning, they wake you up. And 5 of us out of the 9 had throbbing headaches. I don't know what the heck happened to all that ginger tea, but here was the altitude. It slammed into us this morning and it stayed for the entire day. But woke up at 3:45 a.m., had our headlamps, took our little day backpack with some water, some snacks, and set out to the Annapurna Sanctuary with the white peaks glistening all around us in the dark with the moonlight shining. And we're walking on this path. So excited, goosebumps all over. In fact, I have goosebumps right now as I'm talking about this. And we get here around 5 a.m. and you see the first light starting to fall on the peaks of the Annapurna, and there's a hushed silence around as everybody just takes in the majestic sight. So blessed and so grateful to be here. Once again, it just makes you feel so small and so tiny when you're out here, and you felt like you're at the edge of the world. You know, it's the best way that I can honestly describe this moment. So we stood there. I stood there as long as I could, freezing my butt off. It was really, really cold. I had on about maybe 5 to 6 layers. I pretty much had everything on my backpack. I had in on my body, so it was still pretty cold. And then we hiked back. It was just a fantastic day. The wow factor here is obviously the 3:45 a.m. moonlight hike to the Annapurna Sanctuary to see the sunrise over the peaks. You're hiking through fabulous valleys. You're hiking through lush forests. You'll even see waterfalls that I haven't included here. So Annapurna Base Camp is definitely, I think, a bucket list item if you're willing to go to Nepal and you're willing to hike for about 8 days. It's a very, very rewarding hike. And you get exposed to a fantastic culture. So a lot of questions I often get are on how do I pack for a hut-to-hut trek, right? If you're going on a guided, all you need is the day backpack on the left. It shouldn't be more than 20, 25 liters, not more than 6 to 8 pounds. You're really just gonna have your sun hat, a beanie if it's cold, some snacks, some sunglasses. Rain jacket and pants is a must. On my Chile trek, I was not drenched because I had the best rain jacket and pants that I've had for the last 10 years from REI. So Columbia Sportswear, North Face, Arc'teryx, REI, all these guys are amazing. They're expensive, but look, I've got the same rain jacket and pants for 10 years. I honestly want to swap out my hiking clothes, but I can't because they're all so good. And I've had them for 10 years, even though I'm sick of them. Waterproof rain cover for your backpack, definite must if you're going to carry camera gear like I've started to do. On the large backpack on the right, that's when if you're going on your own, you're going to want something, or even if your porter is going to carry this for you at Annapurna, you're going to want something not more than 20 to 22 pounds because they restrict that. The porters can only carry so much themselves. After a point, it gets inhumane. This is the list that I have if I'm doing a self-guided. I go with as minimal stuff as I can because I don't want to carry weight, you guys. I find it really hard, so I just try not to carry so much. So this is kind of a basic general view of what I would pack for a hut-to-hut trek. And how to train for a hut-to-hut trek. Well, there are many people who have different opinions about this. There are a lot of you who are very athletic and you might not need to train. I, however, am not one of those gals. I am not athletic. I wasn't born near the mountains, in the mountains. I didn't grow up doing anything outdoors. And therefore, I'm one of those girls who has to train, which means I start about 3 months before a trek, and I'll kind of walk around the city, but I have access to hikes. So I will definitely hike every weekend. I'll go somewhere. I cannot mimic the altitude, right? I can't mimic the altitude. So I just do the best that I can. I'll try to carry my backpack. I'll throw some weights in there, some books. I will do high intensity cardio workouts. I like working out, so I make it a part of my lifestyle. I anyway do it a couple times a week. I haven't gone to the gym in 8 months. So on and off, I'll go to YouTube and I'll throw something and I'll try to hike. Not hike, I'll try to work out. Try to do weights or core 1 to 3 times a week. It can really help when you want to carry weight and you want to hike. And biking. Biking is a great activity, whether it's a stationary bike or if you want to go biking outside. Just try to do different types of workouts just to get your body used to movement. At the end of the day, a hike is a walk. But when you have to carry a backpack and when you have to go uphill and you're going on mountains with altitude, it kind of becomes a different game. All right. So I think that's pretty much it. Thank you all for attending my talk. This is a group that joined me last year, but I have 2 treks coming up next year. If all goes well, fingers crossed. Kilimanjaro will run in June of 2021 and Nepal will run October of 2021. So if you are interested, email me and we'll get you all signed up and taken care of. And I'm ready for questions. If any of you have any questions for me.
That was amazing. I don't know about everyone else, but I can tell you the tips, the photos, and then you are the absolute best storyteller. I don't know. I felt like I was in a book at that moment. So thank you. It was amazing. I don't know which destination I would choose to go first. They're all so amazing. We have a lot of questions. I know we just hit about the hour mark, so hopefully you guys can stay on. If you want to hear some of these questions, we have quite a few. So I'm just going to get to it, if you don't mind. So we have a couple general ones. And so Darlene was curious, do any of the hikes have scrambling or is it more just straight hiking?
All of these hikes that I've featured are straight hiking. I will not scramble. I am terrified of heights, honestly, and I'm trying to overcome that fear. But all of these hikes have no scrambling, straight hiking.
Okay, good to know. So a couple questions about the food. So Felicity was curious, beside the food that's provided from the hotel and hut, where do you get the food and supplies from in those destinations?
So in Europe, it's really easy because you have little, shops and delis everywhere. You can just grab a sandwich to go. You can, make something and you can carry that with you. So it really reduces the cost of meals. You don't have to eat at the hotel and you don't have to pay for the meal at the hut. So, but when you're in Chile, in Torres del Paine, in the national park, there are no shops like that. So you are dependent on the hut, which is why I go full board and I pay for my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Lunch will be a packed little brown paper bag, which is fine. You just, shove it into your backpack. And then dinner becomes more of a hot meal, which frankly, at that point, I'm grateful for at the end of the day.
Definitely. Okay. And then was it Emily? Emily was curious on the guided and semi-guided treks. Do they accommodate those with vegetarian diets?
Yes, absolutely. They will ask you what kind of, do you have any food restrictions? And if you do, they will accommodate you.
Okay, perfect. So curious, on these treks, are there enough people around that you would feel safe hiking solo?
I will say 100% I would feel safe hiking solo on all the treks that I mentioned. It's really, in terms of navigation, what do you do when you don't know what fork to take? That's what the real question is. And I think it's about learning how to read those maps. And I honestly feel like I have dyslexia because I can't read maps. So I use All Trails in the States. I use All Trails to pretty much route me through on my phone. I don't know if we have All Trails in Europe, honestly. I haven't looked into that, but if you can navigate, you're fine solo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. I know there's a lot of people here that would probably be interested in that. And then Ali, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Do you have any tips on hiking for someone who might take prescription medication? Any tips?
What kind of prescription medication in terms of?
Just in terms of bringing it along with you, or if you need to have access to it, do you have any tips on how you might carry that along with you?
Oh, okay. Yeah, definitely. if you're going to do it self-guided and if you're just going to be on your own, I would say that you put it in a small pouch. I carry, medication as well, like a first aid kit. I've learned not to avoid doing that for weight purposes, right? So I have a little pouch. It's kind of like a compression bag, if you will, and I carry it in that because it helps create more space in my backpack, it takes up less space. Frankly, that's what a compression bag does. So look into they have tiny ones as well that you can use for especially those types of things.
Okay, perfect. That's a good tip. Thank you. Let's see what else. Erica wanted to know if you take all these photos yourself.
I do take all these photos myself. Yes, I love taking photographs. And so often, that's why I prefer going solo and I prefer self-guided for that reason, because what do you do with the group? Why you want to take the photos, right? So I don't want to keep people behind. And that's one of the reasons I just love doing this stuff on my own too.
Yeah, they're amazing, amazing photos.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so a couple questions on the cost. So James was curious, the cost that that slide you put up there was for the cost. Was it mainly for the airfare or for the trek itself? And is that a per person cost?
Yeah, it's a per person cost for the trek itself. The airfare is always separate.
Yeah.
So all the costs that I talked about are just for the trek. So if you talk about Peru and Chile, it's like about $500,000 just for the trek. Even Annapurna Base Camp, you can do it under $800. Your airfare is what's going to get you, especially for those of us coming from the West Coast.
Right, of course. And then Emily had a question if there's any additional expenses that you incur and what those might be.
You really don't incur any additional expenses, which is the beauty of these treks, because everything is self-contained. It's really your meals, and a lot of it is just paid for. If you're in a national park, you don't have a choice. And then if you're on your own and you're doing it somewhere in Europe where you have the option, your meals are going to now include maybe some wine, right? When you're in France and Italy and Switzerland, you're going to splurge. But other than that, are you really going to buy souvenirs if you're carrying a backpack and doing this on your own? You're not. Apart from a cowbell, I didn't buy anything on any of my treks. So it depends. If you are going to, like, for example, if you're in Cusco or if you're in Kathmandu in Nepal, because you are going to halt at the cities before you get into the mountains, there is opportunity to buy things. So unless you want to do that, then you account for that. Otherwise, it's pretty self-contained. There's no other expenses you're going to incur.
Okay, perfect. I actually had a question myself. Are there any age limits for these treks in terms of the maximum age you could be, or can you bring children along as well?
Yeah, on most of these treks, you can bring children along. I think with Annapurna Base Camp, they do have a limit. I think their limit, I think that you have to be 5 and over, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll have to check their website on that. So I think for the Mont Blanc as well, there are no limits that I know of. And for Peru, there might be a limit on how old you have to be as well. So it just depends on where you're going.
Okay, makes sense. Let's see. Oh, in terms of booking the huts, so MJ had a couple questions in regards to how you actually go about booking the huts. You reserve bunks, or how is it set up inside of them?
Yeah, they're set up in bunk style. The one that I stayed in yeah, actually, they were all bunk style. I had only one private room in the Obersteinberg hut because my husband was with me and we wanted to try and get a private room. And they only had one, and we were so lucky we got it. But everywhere else, it's a dorm bed. So you just email the hut directly, or you have to telephone them. In cases like Obersteinberg, you have to call them. And if it's a hut in Italy, they're not going to speak necessarily English. They're going to be speaking Italian. And so that's where sometimes working with the company helps, because they set it up for you. But in Chile, it's very easy to email the organization. It's called Fantastico Sur. I can include that in my presentation when I send it out if people want. But you just email them and you tell them what huts you want to stay in, and they allot a bed to you. So it's pretty easy.
Okay, perfect. And how far in advance would you recommend you book these treks?
These treks, I would recommend you start booking about 6 months ahead of time, because the huts get taken because they're the cheapest option. And everyone's trying to they're trying to do this in as low a budget as possible, right? So they get sold out first before the hotels get sold out. So start at least 6 months in advance if you want to do a hut-to-hut trek.
Okay, perfect. And then MJ had another question in terms of how do you organize solo or self-guided tours? Do you go through the same route as if you're doing the guided ones?
If you want to do a semi-guided, you can still work with the company, but they're going to charge you a fee for helping you, right? They're going to give you the maps and they'll help you book the accommodations. But if you want to do a completely solo self-guided without the help of a company, then Google is your best friend. You get on Google and you're going to find organizations like Fantástico Sur in Chile that's going to help you book the huts. Then you have to read the blogs and figure out, okay, do I want to do the W circuit? Do I want to go left, east to west, or west to east? Which way do I want to go, and why? What's the advantage? What are the pros and cons? And then you route which way you want to go, which will dictate the huts that you're going to stay in. It is a lot of research that you have to do, read blogs, figure out who's done what, and piece it together yourself. That's the only way to do it if you're doing it self-guided. But in places like Chile, in the national park, it's contained to the national park. But in a place like Bernese Oberland, which is a region, you can go any which way. You can go from point A to C to D to B to, it's not like a national park where you only have so many permutations and combinations. So then Bernese Oberland becomes a little challenging, but it's so popular that you can find information on the net and you can do it yourself.
Okay, perfect. And we just had a question come in kind of along those same lines from Jonas. He's asking, where would you suggest people start looking at these various hut-to-hut hikes? Is there a certain site you go to that kind of includes all of them, or do you go to each particular country?
Yeah, I go to each particular country. That's where I start. I start with like France, hut-to-huts. I go to Switzerland, hut-to-huts, Austria, hut-to-huts. I heard there was actually a book which they've turned into an ebook, which lists all the hut-to-huts as part of a network in Europe. I was actually looking at that for my Dolomites hut-to-hut, which was supposed to be this year, which got canceled. But there is such a thing that exists, and I need to find it. And if I do find it, I will actually find it and include it as part of this presentation as well. But there is something that exists like that, I believe.
Okay. And then I have a couple questions on each specific trek that you did. So Erica wants to know about the Dead Woman's Pass. Do people ever die on that in Peru?
No, they don't die. Like I said, there's no drop-offs. There's no exposure on that. It's called the Dead Woman's Pass because from the bottom of the valley, when you look up at the crest, it's the shape of a woman's supine body. So it looks like that. That's all. It's very intimidating also because of the altitude, right? That's your highest point, but nobody's ever died, thankfully.
Okay. Erica, you can go then. You're fine. And then Joyce was asking, how much is the elevation in the 9 miles of the Dead Woman's Path?
You are going to go up to 4,500 meters, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's the elevation for Dead Woman's Pass. It's 13,700 feet is the elevation up to that point.
Okay, now switching over to the Bernese Oberland Pass. Christina B was curious. I know you mentioned time frame. She was curious if late September is too late to hike that.
For Bernese Oberland?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think late September is okay. The only thing you might run into is snow. That's what I was advised last time, and which is why I picked September 1st to the 15th. That's when I did my Tour de Mont Blanc as well. So there's a little bit, you're running into the risk of having snow. And if you get snow, that means some of the trails could be shut down. And also another important point is the huts do not operate year round. So a lot of the huts close by end of September. And a lot of the huts close, a lot of the facilities around the huts close. So if you want to go get food somewhere at restaurants, they're also closing, right? So it just depends. You have to see which destination you want to go to and what country and what's open at that time.
Okay. All right, I've got a couple more. You've got a lot of questions.
Sure.
Great talk. For Mont Blanc, MJ was asking, are there certain groups you would recommend going there with?
Certain groups, certain...
yeah, like Intrepid.
Yeah. I know Intrepid and G are really popular. The other one that I would advise you to look at and just compare costs is Alpine Hikers. I went with them and they were fantastic. I think they're all probably going to be priced very similarly, but take a look and compare them. But I really like them a lot.
Okay. And then Carmela was curious, after the experience of doing the Mont Blanc trek guided, do you think you could have done it self-guided?
I often ask myself that question, Carmela, and the answer is yes. I could have done it self-guided, and I would have preferred to do it self-guided in spite of the amazing people that I did meet. There were a few drop-offs, like I mentioned, but I think I could have gotten through it.
It's your next goal, right? There you go.
Next goal.
And then Emma had a question on the Torres del Paine.
Yeah.
Pronouncing that correctly. She's curious if you can also do that as guided or semi-guided.
You can do it as guided. I know they have guides who will take you. I don't know that you have porters in Torres del Paine, so I don't know who's going to carry your luggage. You'll have to look that up, but there's also a camping option. So I think either the tents are provided or you can bring your tents. You've got both options. So if you don't want to stay in the huts, which are a little bit more expensive, the tents are the cheapest option. There's plenty of campsites and you book them in advance and then you can stay in tents, but they definitely have guides. And if they have guides, I'm pretty sure they have somebody who can carry your luggage for you as well.
Okay, wonderful. All right, just a few more. Christina wants to know, are there any treks that you've gone on that you did not love?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Every one was so scenic. It taught me something. Each one I had a lesson to learn from, and each one was so scenic, so beautiful that I haven't yet regretted a trekking expedition of mine.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Felicity's got a fun question. For bathrooms on the trail, what do? Do you go outdoors? Are there specific areas? Anywhere?
All right, ladies, let me tell you this. On 2 of my treks, I had my periods. It was terrible. There are no bathrooms on the treks, and you just go where you go, and that's what it is. So in Europe, the nice thing is, you're often going to come to some kind of a hut where you can have a snack, and they have restrooms, which is great. So if you time it well, you might be lucky. But if you have your periods and things like that, you're sort of at the mercy, and you just it's whatever's on the way. And you know what, again, I surprised myself. You make the best of it, right? You figure it out, your mind cooperates, and you do it, and you're on your way again. And you're like, wow, I would never have done this back home. I would have been in bed crying, going, I hate my life, right? But when you're out there, everything cooperates, and yeah, you're fine.
Exactly. You just deal. You're in nature.
Yeah, you'll heal. It's great. It's very good.
Okay, so we're going to end with this last question from Catalina, and she's curious, are you selling the treks that you mentioned, or are you simply organizing the groups and then going together with the tour operator?
I'm selling them through the tour operator. So I'm working with local outfitters in Nepal as well as Kilimanjaro. They will help set everything up, and we'll be going together as a group.
Wonderful. I hope they happen. I think everyone hopes we can get on one of these or do something in 2021. So I really hope you are able to make these happen.
Yeah, me too. Fingers crossed, everybody.
And Erica was asking real quick, what are the dates again for those treks?
So they are right now, Kilimanjaro will run in June. It was scheduled to run for February, and we postponed it given the situation. So we've loosely kept it for June 2021. I believe it starts June 3rd, if I'm not mistaken, and it's again for 10 days. And then Nepal will run in October. We don't have the hard dates for it yet. And that's, again, it's going to be an 8-day trip. If it's the Annapurna Base Camp, it'll just be for 8 days.
Right. Oh, amazing. Thank you so much. I think this was fantastic. Like I said, you have inspired all of us. And thank you to all of you who are on the call who asked such great questions. This was amazing. I'm excited to try to do one of these. Not sure if my family will want to join me, but if not, I'm going solo. So
yeah, that's the way to do it. I'm so excited, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, everybody, to share this with you. It made my day super exciting. And I really hope you guys all have an opportunity to go out and get on a trek in 2021.
Wonderful. And we have shared your information So hopefully everyone can connect with you. And then I was just going to share my screen real quick one more time, just let you know about some other upcoming events we have on the calendar for this month. So tomorrow, Nomadic Matt actually is going to be hosting this event with Kristen, Be My Travel Muse. And she's a blogger, pretty famous blogger, and she's going to be talking about how she started a sustainable women's clothing line. So if you'd like to be doing something other than blogging, this is an extra way to get some ideas of what you can do. And then tomorrow night, I'm going to be hosting with my LA counterpart, Leah, and we're going to be hosting the California Happy Hour. That's a little bit different than how these are more presentation style. And the happy hours are more, we'll have everyone unmuted. We're kind of talking about different stories that each of us have, share a drink, we'll play some games. So if you're in the California area and you are wanting to come, please register. And if you're not in the California area and you'd like to join, we'd love to have you there. You can check out all the events on the link at thenomadicnetwork.com/events. And then next week, we have our final event for December, and that's with Nomadic Matt. And he's going to be talking about what travel in 2021 will look like. I know for myself, I'm super excited to hear what his insights are, because I know we're all getting very anxious to travel again. And then we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back in January, and we've got some fantastic events lined up. So definitely check out the calendar. We have so many wonderful events over these next few months. And then again, just check out Patreon if you're interested in giving back to the Nomadic Matt team. And again, you can select a membership level. It's just a small amount and you get all these wonderful perks. So I suggest you take a look at that. And that's all, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today and being a part of this community. We couldn't do it without you. And hopefully we'll see you at another event in these next 2 weeks. And if not, have a wonderful holiday season and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everyone.